Welcome to another edition of the Palcast, not to be confused with the podcast. I'm Joe Yolk. I have a special guest today, actually. Trippy and Mill are both not here. So we brought in Marcus from Let's Talk Knicks podcast. Marcus, how are you doing? And tell people who you are.
I'm doing all right today. The nice hot day in New York City. I'm feeling good. Knicks aren't driving us nuts because it's the off season, so we can all feel. Hopefully, everyone feels somewhat normal and not Knicks Twitter going crazy for no reason. But it's
Always going crazy for no reason.
yeah. So I'm one half of the Let's Talk Knicks podcast. My co-host couldn't come, so it's just me for today. But yeah. Uh we've had we've been around for about
I saw your first
four-ish
episode came
years.
out October 2018. So, like, what was
Yeah.
happening in September, October, November 2018 that made you guys start to do a podcast in the first place?
I mean, we talked about it for a long time. Like Jason and I have known each other for years, and that was kind of the initial connection we had when we lived down in Atlanta where we first met each other. And we're
Nice.
like, all right, we're both from New York, we're both huge Knicks fans. And just over the years, people who know us, they're like, God, all you guys do is talk about the Knicks, and all you guys do is watch basketball and talk about it all the time. You should do a podcast. And we talked about it for like a couple years probably leading up. And when I finally moved back to New York, I was like, you know what? I just went to a game the other night. I'm feeling good. Like, let's just buy the mics and let's just do it. Let's just, like, you never know what it's going to be until you just fire up the mics and go.
Agreed.
So we did one, and that one felt pretty good. And then as we were like, oh, let's keep going. Like every week, let's just try to do one, or every couple weeks. And yeah, I think we took a little bit of a hiatus the last week of the last year because of life gets in the way, and some stuff where time wasn't easy to come by. So, and the other day we were like, you know what? Let's just fire one up. Let's just have it feel good Friday. Let's just do it. So we're up to that's episode 57, I think it was. That's up now. And
It's on Apple Podcasts. Can you find it anywhere else?
yeah, it's on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts.
Awesome.
So it is the off season, so there's not too much going on, but I think now leading up to this coming season, uh we're gonna try and do more of it and just really keep up. Like we tweet from the Twitter handle during the season, like there's more of that engagement, but we just haven't recorded one in a while. So people like us, I guess. They say we sound like fun guys because you can tell. The one thing about us is like people can tell we actually like know each other and like each other by
Yep.
how we talk. It's just like a friendly conversation between two guys. So uh yeah, so that's us. And
You must be better friends with each other than my friends and I are. The way people know that we're friends is that we yell and scream at each other in public, and we sound like we're about to fight. But then if someone else we don't know gets involved, we actually fight them. So it's very different. It
I mean, we do it remotely, so we're never like in the same room doing it either. So
right.
it's but yeah, Jason's just, fun loving guy. Just he has his we each have strong opinions on things, but I guess they just don't come off as,
Which which
aggressive.
player do you stand the most for, and which player does Jason stand the most for?
Oh, I mean, we're both big RJ guys. I think I may have a little more leniency for Julius than Jason does, because
Okay.
I mean that's not to say I don't complain about him all the time, but I think that's I think RJ is the one we both ride for, and he does love Mitch a little. I think the playoffs kind of boosted that a little bit too. Just like when if you hear him talk about Mitch, it's always he wants the best from him, and I think we got the best from him in that first round. And
I
so
swear to
that
God,
was
man, if this guy could just shoot 60% from the free throw line, he's like a top five NBA center.
seriously, and that was what like the funny thing was. So we were going back and forth about this during game 5 back at against Miami and MSG, and it's
When they
like,
start hack a shacking, right?
yeah, and I'm like, let him out. And Jason was saying, he's like, don't take him out of the game. Just let him, he makes a big difference if he's but I'm like, you can't have him out there in case he's got to go to the free throw line. And luckily he hit those free throws, and I
Yeah,
was
he
like,
he went 3 out of 4, man, and they stopped doing it. I was like, that was amazing.
yeah, I was
Thank
like, all right,
God.
I'll back up because that was a hot topic between the two. We're just during these games, we'll just be like texting each other during the games, and that we were just going back and forth about that. And I was like, you got to take him out, you got to take him out, and he shut me up. So I said, all right, I'll good.
I love Mitch. A lot of the thing with Mitch is based on like offensive capability. Offensive rebounding only translates so much, and as we ran into, like it doesn't translate nearly as much in the postseason. Like the difference between Eric Spoelstra coaching the Heat and JB Bickerstaff coaching the Cavs, and Spoelstra being a multi-time NBA champ and what, in my opinion, the best coach in the NBA currently, and JB Bickerstaff. I've talked about it with Cavs fans on Twitter. He somehow failed upwards into a lot of his roles. Like he was the intern and then did well enough to be the coach, but never gets hired as a coach kind of thing. And you could just tell that like the one guy was able to take his effect way farther out of the game than the other one. And Mitch and Hartenstein, Mitch is better at his absolute peak, right? I think Mitch's ability to make guys scared of attacking the paint versus Hartenstein's ability to cover the paint is really what separates the two of them, especially in a Tom Thibodeau defensive anchor center based offense. But when Mitch is getting fouled and or his offensive rebounding capabilities is being hindered by the other team's actual play calls and the way they're covering him and boxing him out and stuff, it is really good that our centers are, to use like a 2K thing, like one guy's like an 86 and the other guy's like an 84. You know what I mean? Like, it's really good that we have a guy that's like Hartenstein wanting to literally say and be, I want to be the best backup center in the NBA is a great guy to have. But again, if Mitch can just make 65% from the free throw line, this guy can be an all-star. Literally, that's like the one main thing holding him back right now.
And I think a good swap that they did, and credit to going out and getting him, was, in 2021, you had Mitch and Nerlens Noel, who are just the same player, just with a difference of a few years. So that doesn't really give you
and
any
then Taj
versatility.
Whenever Noel immediately missed time, which was all the time.
Yeah. So like it's weird when you have the same, your backup center is a replica of your starting center. So there's a little bit of a difference in how Hartenstein plays compared to when Mitch is out there. And you could see Tibbs will roll with Hartenstein a little more in some games. It just depends on the matchups, which we don't say often that Tibbs makes those adjustments. But, that's what was so interesting in seeing the Cleveland series, was Mitch just took those guys completely out of it.
Yeah.
And that's where it showed, like they got praised the year before, Cleveland did, of like, oh, they got the Twin Towers up there in the front court, and like, what are people going to do with this? And he had the balls to play these two centers and just have a huge lineup. And it's like, all right, you want to do that? Let's see how that translates when you have to actually play a full 7-game series. And granted, they said, the lights were too bright, and they kind of they admittedly shrunk during the games in New York. And it's like, well, that's the league, man. You gotta
Jarrett Allen, you played it for Brooklyn for years, man. Like, what did you not know? I don't understand.
I mean, Brooklyn is not the same as MSG. So
no, not at all. I'm saying, but he was close enough to see a difference. You know what I mean? Like, guy, look across the bridge, man. They literally style out games when they're winning 20 games. Like,
it's like, and like I was there for 3 and 4, and it was just like the energy in that place was so crazy that like, and I'd gone in 21 too, but that was still not at full capacity.
Right.
So at this one, when the first like 10 minutes before the game even started, even in the national anthem, people are yelling and screaming, which some people are always like, that's weird. But like every game, like even during regular season, people do that. Like near the end, they start yelling, and it just gets you hyped for the whole game. And once that game starts, like you could see those guys were not made for that moment, I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, also, you actually see when you see Jarrett Allen next to actual 7-footers, you realize that he really is 6'9" with 3 inches of hair, and it does take a little of his allure and blocking the paint away. Like Jarrett Allen and Julius Randle are almost the same height standing side by side, and then Mitch is basically up to where the top of his hair is. And you don't realize that. Like, I know it says Jarrett Allen 6'9", but he's just thought of as a center. You imagine, like, I hear the word center, I imagine 6'11", 7 foot. It's just like, a blockade I have in my head. And then you realize Jarrett Allen's 6'9" with a 7-foot wingspan and really good at blocking and defense, but he can get bodied up. And when you're 6'9", 230, and then the guy is 7 foot, almost 250 now, and Mitch got jacked in the last 2.5 years. Like, this guy went from not being quite like Wemby skinny, but like being the skinnier version of Tim Duncan skinny when Tim Duncan started in the league versus him actually getting bigger as he got older to looking like he could flip over a car. And that's a big difference in the 2.5 years of training, scheduled lifting, and stuff like that. So really a testament to him and a testament to Hartenstein too, again, wanting to be the best backup center in the league.
I'm curious now, with a full offseason of his whole body being healthy, what Mitch is going to come back with. Because before, like his foot he had a bad foot, and so he could only do upper body stuff. And it took a while for him to figure out his body again, which is like a weird thing. People don't really talk about it as much, but when you build up all that muscle in the off season, it messes with messes with the game a little bit. You got to get used to it, like how you move around. And now hopefully you see him running on the beach and doing sprints in the sand and stuff. So hopefully his legs start to get under him now. And, we all wonder if he's going to take that next step on the offense. And I don't think Tibbs is ever going to allow him to, but we've seen flashes. Like, that's something Jason and I like to throw that around. Is like, you see flashes of things of him. Like, there was one play where he's dribbling out for the 3-point line and came in and attacked the basket. And you're like, well, why, it's not something you do often, but why don't they try it a little more and, work on a post-up game down low? Because you can see he wants to do it. It's just like, you got to perfect it first, like you can't get too mad if you can't actually do it in a game. So, but yeah, we love him. I will ride with RJ. I do not, if any deal comes up, I do not want to get rid of him. A lot of people have some question marks about RJ, but
I wanted to ask you about that actually, because I did hear on your podcast. Was it you that was saying you wouldn't even give him up in an Embiid deal, or was that Jason?
It might have been Jason that said that. Yeah,
that's a little over the top. I'm not gonna lie. RJ Barrett's never gonna be an MVP candidate. So if RJ Barrett was the catalyst of getting an MVP candidate, I think we would have to do it. I'm sorry. I hate to tell you guys.
I mean, he said it, but I also probably agreed with it. And it's,
God.
I think it's, I'm trying to, because that's the thing with this and with the Embiid trade is, I think we know you can't get rid of Julius Randle. The front office is not going to do it. It's like him and Tibbs are a package deal for whatever reason. And even if you had to make salaries match and stuff, like Julius is the one you would give up, but they're not going to do it. So who's it going to be next? And I know if we're being realistic, RJ probably has to be involved in it. So you have a big three-ish of Brunson, Julius, and Embiid. And you have to give up Mitch in a deal like that too. So is it like yeah, I don't know. And like, if we could get by with like keeping RJ, you give up Grimes and quickly or something. I think that was one mismatch we were talking about is if you give up quickly, they already have Maxey, who's like the exact same guy. So,
well, what you're missing about the Randall part is that they also have Tobias Harris, and I actually have a 12-minute video coming out about potential Embiid deals for Big Nick Energy. It's like 99% done. I literally am just waiting for Vin to make me an intro for it, and I'm going to be able to release it. I'll tease you a couple of the trades I propose on there real quick, and I did them on Fanspo. They work. And the main issue that I ran into, like thinking about like how the 76ers have a roster, how the Knicks have a roster afterwards, is that I can't, they would have to 100% either deal Tobias or Randall has to go to a third team, because when I'm putting together their lineup after you make this trade, right? Like the hypothesis is that if Embiid went to the Knicks are giving up 3 players, 3 unprotected picks, 3 of their protected picks. So that's 9 assets for one individual player. And granted, from the trade wise, it's a 3-for-1. And then RJ or Randall would always be the catalyst money wise. Mitch is in every trade, because I mean, we're not gonna have Mitch and Embiid in the same team. And then they would need a center. Like they literally actually would need a center after giving up Embiid. And then either IQ or Grimes was the tertiary part to make like them get a young, good player, like make the salaries match. And all versions of that worked. You could do RJ Grimes, RJ quickly, Randall Grimes, Randall quickly. And what I really came to was that RJ and Grimes made the most sense for Philadelphia to take because RJ doesn't really overlap with anyone on their starting lineup. Randall and Harris, that just immediately becomes a cluster. Like I don't know about you. I wouldn't want to play Julius Randle and Tobias Harris at the same time. And
yeah,
I can't put $70 million to two guys that can't play together.
I would agree also. Like if there any scenario I was thinking of, like you have to put a third team in there because whoever, we want to maybe get something back, like just like a role player or, no, I know everyone says you can never have enough shooters, but we never seem to have that many. So if there's a way to get one back,
yeah,
that would be ideal. But I think you're right in that, I still say Julius wouldn't go anywhere. And that's probably the reason Philly wouldn't want to do it is because they're kind of handcuffed to Tobias Harris. And, who knows what's going to happen with James Harden. So that throws a little wrinkle into it also. So I still say it doesn't even happen, but it's, and even like those quote that like, I forget when it was from, maybe it was from like last year or something that Embiid wouldn't even want to play for Tibbs. So if Tibbs and Randall are the ones that you are riding with till the end, that handcuffs us a little bit. And, plenty of people are going to want to say fire Tibbs, but and I get on that train too. Something always happens.
I do as well.
You're like, yo, I'm so sick of this guy. And like, he's not doing anything. And then he does just enough to save his job. And that's where I was saying like, if what's going to happen is they're going to be like hovering around like 500 early. He's going to get on the hot seat. Then they're going to go to that mid-season tournament and they're probably gonna like win the whole thing or like get to the finals of it, and then they'll be like, oh, Tibbs, like we're like front office is gonna say, well, we're fine, we're gonna keep him, it's gonna be okay, and then we're stuck for another year. So
doesn't that tournament just scream either the Knicks or the Kings winning, and either one of those fan bases like, yeah, we won something, man, this means we're on the up and up, and then they both just flame out in the first round,
crashing down. Yeah
Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I do want to push back to you a little bit about why the Knicks don't want to get rid of Randall. And I don't think it's because necessarily like the front office is truly married to him or even Tibbs is truly married to him. I mean, Tibbs is definitely married to him while he's on the team. It's so weird because us as fans also think this, and we're not paid, obviously, to like analyze basketball, watch tape, watch film, like really dissect why and how an NBA roster can or would be made to win a title or compete for a championship. Julius Randle is great on paper, and you could just see clear as day, like any of us from the stands, from home, other front offices. There are some times where his attitude gets the best of him, and he's a major detriment to your team. And if I'm Leon Rose and I'm like, this is a two-time All-NBA player, two-time All-Star, one most improved a couple of years back. Literally the last 3 seasons, you can put Julius Randle up statistically, even with the one season they did bad in 2021-22 against most of the league. And he's probably like on paper, between the 3rd and 5th best power forward. But the only value he has is a throw in for something. Or like if you traded him on the open market, no one wants to give you their good young players or their draft picks for a guy that's an All-NBA player. I think his perceived value to the Knicks or any value he has is higher on the current team he's on than any other team he could be on. It's why he left New Orleans, even though he was already averaging like almost a double-double there. Like they didn't even try to sign him. He was just a free agent we got. It really makes you think how much a person's personality or their ability to handle pressure. And then oddly enough, he's forced to handle pressure in one of the 2 largest markets we have in America, which kind of crazy in and of itself. But I just don't see a world in which they're going to get value out of Julius Randle unless he at least once performs well in the postseason. And whether Leon Rose wants to hang on to him or not, I think they just feel handicapped by that because they're going to trade him for a star, or they would want to trade him for almost like an Embiid or Kevin Durant or Rudy Gobert like package, because on paper he's almost that good if you just don't include the playoffs for any reason. And they would just never get that. So I don't know if it's really they wouldn't want to trade him versus they can't get what they want out of him.
Yeah, and like you said, we're not paid to see these things. Like what we do see and what everyone seems to notice about him. But other teams who have guys that are being paid to see, they see it too.
Yeah.
So, and you hear it all comes up. We're like, oh, he's got to show up. He always shrinks in the playoffs. He has these spells of like bonehead moves. Like, what are you doing? And obviously, Jalen Brunson coming to the team was a huge help to him. And he's even admitted it. He's just like, yeah, you don't have to be called on to do everything, which I hate that he was even called on to do everything at some point. So it's like,
exactly.
You put Brunson in there, and I loved at certain points of the season, you could see he'll give Julius one shot to not turn it over or do a spin move into something. As soon as he does, he's like, no, I got it. And he takes care of it. I love to see that. And there's just some things he says, and I'm like, it's weird, that we can't get equal value for him in any trade scenario. And I think it's like, it's funny. Did you listen to him on Paul George's podcast?
I heard the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and he touched on why he left New Orleans is because they were going to get Zion, so they didn't need him.
Yeah.
So they weren't even going to try to keep him. So he knew he was out. And which I still would make that trade straight up if Zion starts, messing around again and they want to just get rid of him. I'll pack his bag. I'll go get him.
Dude, same here. That's the point of why Randall doesn't have value, though, right? Because it's like Zion Williamson doesn't even play, and we're all like, I would trade Randall for Zion straight up. Think how crazy that is, even for that guy's psyche.
An insane statement, too. and you feel bad because he's a nice guy when he's just talking. Like, listen to that podcast almost makes you
I liked him more.
A little bit more because you're like, oh, he's just like a normal dude. But then he says something like, I never really watched film before. And you're like, why would you say that? So
it really makes you think, though. Think of it this way: they're all like, those guys are super athletes. They grew up. They're like if you're like over 6'6", you have like a 3 to 5% chance of literally making professional basketball somewhere. That's a very high number. Imagine just growing up and being like that, and then being like, I've always been the best. I've never watched film. I think he might not be the only one. He just was the only one to say it publicly recently.
Say it out loud. Like, that's crazy though. But you see guys like, and for being on a team with a guy like Tibbs, who all he does is watch film, that's what drives me nuts. Is like every post game, oh, we got to look at the film. We got to look at this. I always want to say, Tibbs, what were you looking at that you got to look at the film to see what nonsense was just going on out there? Like, what are you not paying attention to? And Julius will say it too, almost like as a reflex. It's just like a default answer that he'll say, but now we know he's not actually doing it. So and like, Quick posts himself watching film. Like, he talks about it all the time. Like, that's what people like about him. And even like a lot of the young guys, that's what they do. And it's nice for them to be in that Tibbs environment, I guess, because you're like, oh, well, we see the coaches doing this, they're pushing on us. And then you have the one guy who's the star of the team who never gets held accountable for anything. And he just is like, oh, well, I'll come back tomorrow and do the same thing over and over again. And it's so frustrating.
It's got to be the least accountable thing he's ever said.
Like, it's this whole thing with the two of them is just, it's so bizarre to see, to see that. And that's what I loved about who's the coach of the Kings again?
Mike Brown.
Right. And like last year there was a clip going around, and I remember I was watching the game when it happened, but then the clip goes around of him yelling at De'Aaron Fox about, you got to get back and do this, you got to do this. And De'Aaron Fox says after the game, he's like, yeah, he told me what I was doing wrong, and I knew I had to switch things up and, play smarter, play harder, because guys are looking at me as the leader of the team. And if I'm not performing that way, he has a right to yell at me. So that's like, you have to do that. And for Julius says, like, I like to be, I want to be that leader. I want guys to follow my example and stuff. I'm like, well, you're not leading by example. I would rather see RJ take that step, because you see it in him too. Like, again, I love RJ, so I want great things out of him. But you see the way, the passion and like the anger he plays with sometimes, but he doesn't like I don't know. You don't see him give up. You don't see him flailing his arms around and complaining about things. And the way he talks to the media is like, this kid's 21, 22 years old. And how is he handling this better?
Right.
Maybe it's the Canadian upbringing. Who knows? But it's like, look, I understand what I'm doing wrong. And then you saw that flip switch in the playoffs
Yeah.
when he was playing terribly, and people are like, "You got to get it together, man." And I'm never going to give Stephen A. Smith credit for anything because it was not him that told RJ Barrett he's got to start attacking the rim and hitting shots. But RJ,
RJ can look at his Twitter mentions and figure that the hell out.
Yeah, like we didn't need Stephen A. to say that. So, but he takes that and he turned around. That whole series where he's like, okay, he's the guy. Granted, yes, game 6, he did not have a good shooting outing. And
game 6, if RJ or Randall show up, I think we bring it to game 7.
They hit
Brunson was out there
more
by himself.
Shots.
Yeah.
Yeah. If either of them hit 2 or 3 more shots, that series is going back to New York. And it's funny, like the same thing happened, and I guess I'll transition a little bit, but the same thing happened in 21 where we knew what the issue was. And the solve for that was Evan Fournier because you needed shooting. Now it's Dante is going to come in and play that role of the bench scorer, of just like another shooter. So it's like, okay, they're putting together a squad that's hopefully complementary to each other. It's going to see like how do they start staggering those minutes and who's going to actually get those minutes, because circling back, if RJ's or Grimes is gone in a trade, I think they become more expendable because you have, and I'm not saying he's going to start, but like Dante DiVincenzo coming in, he's going to get probably like Grimes's minutes, or you have like an RJ, Grimes, Dante, 3 shooting guards out there. Who's going to be finishing games? Who's going to be getting a chunk of those minutes? And I want to say it's RJ, but that leaves Grimes hanging out there, and he becomes useful in a trade or quick, or I don't know, or quick. Who knows?
I could like tag you in this on this tweet that I did when we're actually done with the podcast, but I literally calculated the whole Knicks 9-man rotation for the whole year, and I managed to do it so that
I saw that actually. Yeah.
I'll just tell you all their minutes per game. I'm not going to tell you the whole formula I put in, but I had Brunson at 34, Grimes at 30, Barrett at 34, Randall at 36. We don't have a backup power forward, so he kind of has to play the most, unfortunately, which for some reason Tibbs is going to be happy about that. Yeah, the guy that doesn't watch film, that always says, let's watch the film. I don't understand. Mitch at 27, Quickly also at 30, Hart at 32, Dante at 25, and Hartenstein at 21. So they have a 9-man rotation. The lowest amount of minutes is Hartenstein. It's because Hartenstein and Mitch only play each other's position. So it's just however you split that 48. And then just between like expected injuries, like guys coming in and out of like rotation a little bit, matchups, and I truly think Dante is going to get the lowest out of, like, if I take Hartenstein out of this, he's going to get the lowest out of this 8-man rotation. I mean, he's a great 3-point shooter, and like he might be closing more games than we would be expecting or want with a trifecta of RJ, Grimes, and Quickly all existing on the team. But if the game calls for 3-point shooting and Dante's our best 3-point shooter, and he's only getting 25 minutes a game, and they happen to be, and 4 of the 25 happen to be the last 4 minutes of the game, it's really not that hard when you actually map it out. I have a bachelor's in accounting, in case you're wondering why I think like this. To figure out how all these guys actually get minutes. And also, it's just a reminder that when you only run a 9-man rotation, you're actually giving your best 8-9 players the whole game versus a lot of teams that do run 11, 12-man rotations. They're trying to mix and match a little bit more. Even with doing all of this, I had 1,200 minutes left, which out of the 1,200, I put 1,100 on Deuce and Sims through injuries and then just whatever happens. So it wasn't too hard to really get to the point where Grimes, Quickly, and Barrett are all still over 30 minutes a game, and then Dante is under 26. So it shouldn't be too bad. But I mean, what's cool is that we got him, and if we do trade any of those guys, it's not like we're losing everything.
I mean, I'm still, and kudos to you on figuring all that out, because numbers drive me crazy. I'm terrible with math, so I would never be able to sit and figure that out. But
I have a lot of free time at work.
but like I'm still, curious to see what this roster looks like as constructed to start the season, because I don't know that we need to make a major deal yet. And
Yet's the key word.
So like everybody is throwing these names around, like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do this. I'm like, we weren't even really, this team as it was didn't really hit their stride until after the All-Star break or after the trade deadline, really. And they're like, okay, you go on a couple like 9-8 game winning streaks. Same thing happened in 21, where they just like had a couple win streaks come at the back end of the season, take that into the playoffs. And so let's see what this looks like from the start of the season. You give them the whole offseason together. Brunson and Hart going to play Team USA. I feel like that's going to have an effect on how they start the season off, for a positive effect.
Marcus, you're doing great segues for me, by the way. I'm on 4 hours of sleep, and you keep bringing up the topics I told you, and I'm like, this guy's amazing.
I knew where I was headed when I started talking about that. So like I'll be excited to see how they start, and then when we get to say January, maybe like late December, and just see like where the team is, then you can start to think about, do we need to make a move to like really upgrade this roster? Because the East is really not that deep, or it's more leveled amongst more teams. I'll say that.
I think it's top 6 heavy.
Yeah, and so when you go, 6 even, like, who would you say you got? Philly, Boston, Milwaukee, top 3.
Miami.
Do you really think Miami's going to take? That's the thing with Miami is
what would you say the odds are they do get Dame? Like, what is the percentage they get Dame versus not? Especially with there not seeming like there's another team even involved right now.
I don't know that it happens before the start of the season. Maybe if because that's my thing with Miami is they always kind of just hover around being okay during the regular season, and then they can turn it on in the playoffs, and that's frustrating for some people, but that's what they play for, is they play for the playoffs and dealing with injuries and that sort of thing. But I don't know that Miami's going to be like a top 6, maybe top 6, but not top 4. Maybe they hover around that 7-6 area, but after,
and then Cleveland, New York, that's 6 teams though.
I still say the Knicks leapfrog Cleveland. I'm not buying Cleveland.
I don't know, man. They're Donovan Mitchell, if nothing else, shows that he dominates lesser teams, and there's a lot of lesser teams in the regular season. It's hard for me to imagine Cleveland not getting 50 wins solely because when they play crappy teams, they blow them out by 20.
Like, I could see Cleveland doing well in that midseason tournament. Like, they're one of those teams that's like, like if they only got to play a few of them, cool.
And then you were talking about Miami, and I'm like, I could totally see Jimmy Butler sitting out anyway.
Yeah, like he's like, that's like we could talk about that the tournament too. That just doesn't make any sense. But it's like, what is the incentive for these guys to play? But
if you're one of the 13th, 14th guys on the roster and you're playing for that $500,000, that makes a lot of sense. I actually wish they did the tournament, and it's like, you can't start your normal starters. Would be an awesome loophole to actually make the guys that don't make a lot of money try and really care about it, because that's how they would get the best play.
You want it for them because, like if Deuce is going in there and he's going to play his heart out to try to win, it's like, yeah, they'll probably get like more. It's like watching college basketball.
But if I'm Brunson, Randall, or Barrett, I'm making 25K a year. 20 mil a year. What do I care?
Yeah, they don't care. So, and if they win they win the tournament, like, it's not a title. It's not the NBA championship that they want. So it's weird. They really should have put better incentives into that. Like, you get draft picks or something, or you automatically make it into the playoffs if you win or something like that. It's like, why do they want to do it? But
if they did it so that if you make the playoffs, you now have a 5% chance at winning the lottery, or if you miss the playoffs, if you miss the playoffs and you win the tournament, you're guaranteed a top 8 pick or something, they would add a lot of value to it.
Yeah. I think that maybe they'll figure it out over time. I think Silver's good about, listening to people and what everyone's saying they want in the league. Thank God they're given an extra challenge, because the challenge rule is so stupid, and
Yeah.
I'm like, no one's ever going to do it. The one thing I wish they brought back was being like, I know it takes up time, but looking at plays in the last 2 minutes, because these refs got so many calls wrong.
Well, they still do. It just they limit a lot of the calls that they're allowed to look at. It's now just block charge and just out of bounds, right? They used to be able to look at way more.
They used to look at everything in the last 2 minutes, and now all we have to see is the 2 minute report that says, okay, yeah, that doesn't help us either. Like, that's a stupid thing too. It's like,
my God,
what good is that doing anybody to know that? It's just making people angry. But
exactly, as a fan, it makes you very angry. That's it.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, yeah, well, now we know that these refs don't know what they're doing. So it's of no benefit to anybody. But to
Here, let's get into because you did bring it up real quick about the rosters. Let's so we're going to go over Team USA, Team Canada, and the USA Select Team. And we're doing it because they do actually have Knicks on all three, which is really, really cool for us. Starting with the Team USA roster, we obviously have Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. The rest of the roster fills out with Anthony Edwards, Austin Reeves, Tyrese Halliburton, Mikal Bridges. Not like they have to actually add any more fuel to the fire of Mikal trying to come to New York in a couple of years, but Bobby Portis, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler, Cam Johnson, which is now going to watch Mikal Bridges flirt with the enemy, Brandon Ingram, and Paolo Banchero. Also, I wanted to say, because I didn't tell you this before, I don't know how much of our stuff you really listen to. I would bet my whole life that the Nets and the Sixers would never deal their best players to the Knicks, and I can't imagine a world that Joel Embiid actually ends up on New York, but it's because it's been such good fodder for the past week that you kind of like have to talk about it one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, they always talk about like within the conference, like would they do that? Apparently, like Daryl Morey doesn't care, but
allegedly,
yeah. But I always thought that was weird that they would refuse to trade players within the conference. I get it if it's like, with the Knicks,
your
with
division,
Nets,
I would never do
the division. Yeah, with the Nets or the Sixers, like, yeah, these teams you got to play 4 times a year. But it's weird to like hear that roster because we're used to, and I get it, it's not the Olympics, so that would probably change things a little bit with
the last USA team in FIBA got 7th, and that team had Kemba Walker on it. And just as an example,
shout to Kemba Walker. Now he's out in Europe, but
AS Monaco.
It's not the worst place to have to live, but
no,
yeah, it's fascinating to hear that lineup, and you wonder like who's gonna really show up and do they have a chance to like really win, because you have no legit superstar on that team. I feel like the guy that's gonna really probably show out the most is Anthony Edwards, because that's just
I think the 3 best players on their team are the guys that have the chance to be the 3 best or the highest up on like the overall NBA ability scale per se, like top 10, top 15 players at some point in their career. I think it's Edwards, Brandon Ingram, who's almost there, but also might be at his peak, and Paolo Banchero. But Paolo is probably like 3 to 4 years away from still even getting to that point. Anthony Edwards looks like he's ready to make the leap now.
I mean, he says a lot of crazy things, but like this is the year that he's gonna take that leap. And I was like, all right, cool, but let's see it, because Minnesota's always like a weird wild card team that they always have high hopes and nothing really happens with them. Like, I remember Jason saying years ago, he's like, watch the NBA Finals in like 2025 was going to be the Knicks and the Timberwolves, because we're always hovering around the same lottery picks and everything. It's like 2025, that's going to be the year that the 2 of them are playing each other in the finals. So we'll see. But
it'd be a weird finals.
It would. Yeah, I don't know. It's
just 2 teams you can never even imagine making the finals, honestly.
It just sounds weird to say. Yeah. But then if you saw the marquee for that, you're just like, oh, this is weird. But would I be there? 100%.
Oh, obviously.
But like one guy who I brought him up a few times, who I would love to get him in a trade, if not Zion, is Brandon Ingram. If they could have gotten him,
facts,
that would have taken us to another level. And you get rid of, because we have no wings, no stretch 3s and 4s and stuff. But I know New Orleans is never going to give him up. But
it's also another thing. It's like then they would have because if we're dealing Brandon Ingram, then he actually is kind of a 4. You'd want to get rid of Julius
You got
Randle.
to get rid of Julius. And
It's just another thing where it's like, I'm not Zion Williamson and Julius Randle aren't going to be on the same team. That's why they didn't sign him in the first place. Like, it's just.
So give me a third team that Julius can go to. Well, I'll give him a Metro card. We'll send him on his way. But like, it'll be interesting to see like how these guys do. And what I love so much, and we talked about this on ours, our episode, was, you know, the folklore of Olympic Melo, and just how he came back after those years when he played in the Olympic teams. And, you know, he had his MVP caliber year after, what was it, 2012? After that 2012 Olympics. And you hope that happens. Granted, it's Olympics versus, you know, just like the regular.
It's just it's FIBA, stuff, it's not the Olympics. So it's like the lesser version of these teams, kind of.
Yeah, but like being able to get that run in, you get your confidence going. You know, you wonder what next level Jalen Brunson has. Maybe this is the time that you see it. And, you know, he comes back. I don't know. We were talking about, I don't know what else he can add to his bag, because he is so sound in so many areas, like way better shooter than people thought he was going to be. You know, like you still trust him to take a shot. He can create his own shot, maybe play it off the ball a little more. We'll see what that looks like, and just setting up guys. But it's, you know, I'm hopeful for him that he benefits a ton from this, and we get, you know, FIBA Brunson or Olympic Brunson coming back to us in October. And Josh Hart, you know, it's weird. You know, I doubt he's going to get many minutes, like impactful minutes on that team. But
I don't know, man. Steve Kerr's the coach and Eric Spoelstra's on this coaching staff. I think they're going to see Josh Hart try his butt off and be like, he should actually be closing, covering our best wing, as opposed to most of these guys.
And yeah, I mean,
you don't need 5 guys that can score to actually have a functioning basketball roster. Usually you only need like 3 guys that can score, 1 guy that's a defensive guy, and then 1 guy that does the dirty work. And Josh Hart fits that dirty work to a T.
Plays, man. That's what he's out there for. And if he gets buckets, he gets buckets. So that's like, you know, I like that option of them playing, and what that's going to do for when they come into the regular season. Like, they're going to be juiced up and ready to go.
And that was part 1 of the Big Nick Energy podcast with Marcus from Let's Talk Knicks podcast. Make sure to tune into part 2 tomorrow to hear the rest of the conversation with Marcus about what we're looking for from both RJ and Quentin Grimes for their respective FIBA teams, and how Marcus and Jason decided on the name Let's Talk Knicks back in 2018. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment on all of their stuff, as well as our stuff for Big Nick Energy on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and of course, both the Big Nick Energy Palcast and podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Pods, Google Pods, and Podbean. Find their Let's Talk Knicks podcast on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. Let's go Knicks. Peace.